Okay, so my thoughts on Assassin's Creed Valhalla leading up to release weren't exactly, how would you say, optimistic.
And so today, I'm going to go through the major problem with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's not an Assassin's Creed game. Don't fucking call it an Assassin's Creed game. Don't advertise it as an Assassin's Creed game.
For a fairly long time, I truly did believe that this game marked a definitive last hope for this series to return to the identity that I loved so much. But after Ubisoft UK very kindly gave me a review code for the game, I jumped in, and I can honestly say that I was pleasantly surprised. Despite that surprise though, I'm not exactly sure if I was wrong about this game. But it's not as simple as that. Before we get into the video though, it'd really be appreciated if you could hit like, and also if you're new here, make sure to subscribe with post notifications turned on. And without further ado, let's get into my first spoiler-free thoughts on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now let me preface this video by saying, I'm trying my hardest here to not knee-jerk this game, because honestly after playing the opening scene, I did exactly that. My immediate thoughts were that this was a complete return to form for the series. But I've done that before. Not only did I knee-jerk the trailers and the demos to this game, but I did the exact same thing 3 years ago when Assassin's Creed Origins released, a game I initially thought was top 3 in the series. Now don't get me wrong, the opening to Valhalla is magnificent. From the atmosphere of the first scene to the gorgeous world of Norway you're thrust into, along with Darby McDevitt again setting up countless side characters in intriguing ways, as he's done in so many games before. To be honest, I could easily call Valhalla's opening my favourite of the entire generation. Hell, I could probably say it's my favourite since Revelations. However, Valhalla, like so many of the Assassin's Creed games, doesn't truly show its flaws until you've made a sizable dent in its runtime. After you make your way to England with your Viking brethren, you feel nothing but excitement to jump straight into all of what this game holds. But before you can truly get going, you're faced with what so far is, for me, one of the more disappointing elements of the game. The settlement system, a mechanic that in theory works similarly to Red Dead 2, a mechanic that I was massively excited to see built on the likes of the Cafe Theatre, the Homestead and Monteregione. But tragically, the system is nowhere near as in depth as I thought it would be. You could argue that it's not even as in depth as those Homestead missions from 8 years ago. Essentially, growing your settlement boils down to buying your people buildings using crafting materials you get from fairly repetitive raids, before going on 1 or 2 missions for them to potentially gain some extra stat buffs. So far, it's been a real shame to see, because the potential a system like this had was largely wasted, with most of the time you spend working on the settlement just being going off to find crafting resources from the raids I mentioned earlier. Ah yes, the raids. That epic Viking fantasy that was advertised so heavily with hashtag like a Viking. Well, I have to say, the raids you can go on in Valhalla are actually really fun and novel. At least, they are the first couple times. Unfortunately though, as a lot of people expected, raiding these massively similar monasteries over and over again becomes tedious after only a few expeditions, with the same formula of looting 3 or 4 identical chests being repeated across the entire map. And considering the very limited building materials you actually get for doing these raids, going out of your way to do them is fairly hard to justify most of the time. Speaking of raids, the majority of minute-to-minute gameplay of them is made up of combat, a system that many people were skeptical of in the trailers. And whilst I can say that Valhalla's combat is definitively better than both Odyssey and Origins, it still shares the same flaws of those 2 past systems. However, it does have a much more fluid feeling, despite some janky animations. Mowing through enemies with double axes is as satisfying a feeling as you can get, but the limited health the game provides you with means you can only fight for so long before you have to retreat and recover, really forcing you to manage your health and stamina effectively, and preventing the problems the likes of Black Flag have, where the combat can become mindless and infinite. Honestly, I genuinely do enjoy the combat, and especially if you change your control scheme to have more of a classic Assassin's Creed feel, it becomes a far more intuitive experience that provides challenge when it should, without feeling tedious to get through. Speaking of having to change settings though, the same goes for stealth. where not only did I have to turn guaranteed assassinations on, not only did I have to lower the difficulty of stealth, but I also had to adapt the control scheme to reduce the amount of times I accidentally swung my axe at someone's head instead of getting that ever so satisfying assassination. But the fact that you even need to change those settings in the first place says a lot about this game's stealth, and about most of its Assassin's Creed elements. Because the biggest problem I've had with Valhalla ever since the first trailer dropped was that it simply isn't enough of an Assassin's Creed game to justify the title. Now, if I were to discuss the story, there is more than enough classic content to keep me satiated, but for the game to feel like a part of the series in moment-to-moment gameplay, the player needs to actively seek out an alternate version of the game through settings, something that you shouldn't have to do to experience an Assassin's Creed game. Sure, the RPG mechanics are toned down, the leveling is nowhere near as much of a grind, you don't have to constantly craft new items to not be obliterated by an average soldier. But to say I was wrong about Valhalla being yet another historical RPG with the Assassin's Creed name slapped onto it, well, I don't think I was wrong at all. In spite of that fact though, Valhalla has still truly surprised me. Because for every issue I do have with this game, there's a redeeming quality to balance it out, something I can't say for most of the recent entries into the series. Sure, the stealth's not as well integrated as I'd like, but the combat's a massive improvement on games that came before. Sure, the raids can get repetitive, but the world itself is gorgeous, atmospheric, and full of genuinely interesting world events and side characters. And as for the story, well, you'll have to wait for my full comprehensive review to find out my full opinions on that, but like, so far, it's looking good. Like, it's looking really good. So, was I wrong about Assassin's Creed Valhalla? No. No, I wasn't. Valhalla is, for the most part, exactly what I thought it would be. And ideally, it's not what I want to see from the series. But without a doubt, I can say that it's one of the better games Ubisoft have ever made and could ever make on this engine, that's proven itself time and time again to be unreliable. The gameplay is not masterpiece tier, but it's not even close to being bad. It's highly enjoyable at best and slightly dull at worst. And honestly, in my opinion, it's the best job that Ubisoft have done in quite a while. At this stage, if you're a fan of Assassin's Creed, I'd say that this game is worth a buy based on the story alone. And if you're simply a fan of quality AAA games, then I'd more than recommend picking it up alongside your next gen console. But trust me when I say that Valhalla was not built for the base Xbox One or base PS4. So if you have the chance, I'd probably advise you to, avoid that. I mean, it does run. Most of the things work. It's just that none of the textures load for like 20 seconds. So if that's a deal breaker, yeah, wait for a next gen console. Obviously, I have a long ways to go with this game, and this is mostly my early thoughts. But with the foundation I've seen, with the gameplay I've experienced, and with the story that's been set up by the genius that is Darby McDevitt, I could easily call Valhalla one of the best Assassin's Creed games we've seen, if not the best game that Ubisoft have put out since Assassin's Creed Black Flag. But myself and all of you will have to wait for my full, comprehensive, spoiler-filled story and game comprehensive review that's coming at the start of December to find out if this game truly lives up to the praise that I'm giving it right now. So if you do want to see that full review along with a massive amount of other Valhalla content, along with, various other content, Spider-Man, Miles Morales, all that type of stuff, then make sure to subscribe with post notifications turned on. And real quick, I just want to say that we did just hit 1,000 subscribers. It's a goal that I've been striving for years, so thank you all so much. It couldn't have happened without all of you. Thank you all so much. I really genuinely appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Also, if you did enjoy the video, like I did say at the start, a like would be really appreciated. It does genuinely help me out. Also, comment down below and tell me your thoughts on Valhalla so far, but please, I beg, do not spoil the game. It'd just ruin it for everyone. With all that being said though, I've been Joe, aka Found a Scarab, and I'll see you in the next one.